Our NBA draft scouting report series here on the Supers Media YouTube channel rolls on. Today we are looking at Jared McCain. That is Riley Davis. I am Ryan Ralph. Um, Jared McCain is, I think, one of the more unique players in this class for not just his off-court interests as well, but his on-the-court style. Riley, we'll get started. Just give me an overall view of his game from a general standpoint. How do you break his game down?
Yeah, he is an elite shooter. That's the best thing he does on the court. He has a perfect base. It's always the exact same. Great balance, regardless if he's on the move, if he's on the catch. He can do a little bit out of pick and roll, can handle some, can make passes make plays and reads and passes for his teammates. I like his potential a lot, even though he's sort of really an undersized combo guard for the time being. But I'm very high on his potential.
Yeah, so the I describe him as unique. I describe him as unique because he's an elite shooter and I like his potential. He showed a lot from a mental standpoint too throughout the course of last season and growth. Towards the end of the season, he was Duke's best player.
Mm-hmm.
He was Duke's best player. Filipowski was that guy early on in the season, but he emerged as the leader and their best player. I put him as unique though. That's we're going to talk about one word to describe his game. Mine is unique. I feel like I've said that 5 times already in this video because he is an elite shooter, but he's somewhat stationary when he shoots. His form is textbook, the way you'd want it to be, but he has to have that set base to get it off. He's quick getting into it. He can handle the ball. He has some playmaking ability. He rebounds for a position pretty well. But to be the shooter that he can be, he has to be like set to get it off. And he can get into it quickly, but he's not one of these guys you see coming off screens off the move and shooting him while he's moving. He's got to be set. I think he's somewhat unique in that regard. Give me one word for you to describe his game.
My one word was knocked down. I mean, because it goes right into
Knockdown
what I was saying
shooting.
about his shooting. And I'm
Yeah.
pushing back because I don't think he has to like step into it. I don't think we saw him run off of screens a lot, but he hit a lot of threes off the bounce. Um, so where like I just think that maybe we view him as like, oh, he has to have his feet set because his feet are always set. He's just really good at getting his
Yeah.
feet set.
I mean it from the standpoint of like he's not like JJ Redick coming off screens where
Mhm.
like he just has to catch and then he can position it from there. He's somebody who will come off screens, pump fake, and then get into his shot. That's more of what I'm talking about with needing to be set. He gets into it quickly, but he's not going to be one of those guys who you see flying around knocking on shots with his legs in every which position.
I'll give you that. I'll give you that. I also think it's worth mentioning. I'm kind of surprised neither of us have because I know like looking into splits is sort of your thing. If you've ever read the Ralph report over on heatcheckcvv.com, Brian Ralph can look at some splits. He was
Absolutely.
so good in big games. Like
He
you look at
was.
his 32 points in their tournament loss to NC State. He was the only dude who showed up. Eight threes in the first round win over James Madison. I mean, even in the two games against UNC, he had 19 in Cameron and 23 in Chapel Hill. And those 23 points, I mean, we were both there, sat next to each other for that game. It felt like he might as well have 30 in Chapel Hill. Again, he was the only Blue Devil who showed up that night. And I don't know. I think his mental wiring, that what we saw this past year at least has me more like really high on his potential and I think he can. I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves in our categories, but I think he can hit his ceiling.
Well, let's talk about that as we're going through these prospects, we're evaluating whether we think they're more likely to hit their floor or hit their ceiling. You think he's more likely to hit that ceiling because of the way he's wired mentally.
I do. And I'll talk about this more in my best case comp for him as well. The next step for him, I believe, comes down to refining his handle some. Like he
Mhm.
got to the rim a decent amount his 1 year at Duke, but it was mainly with sort of overpowering guys, or maybe not overpowering as much as like acceleration, deceleration, like in and outs, and less of like counter moves. So I think there's a chance he can survive in the league if he doesn't refine his handle that much.
Mhm.
But if he can develop more of a bag, so to speak, and be a little more dynamic off the bounce, I love his sticking potential in the league.
I think that's one of the tough things when evaluating him because I think his ceiling, if he develops that, is so high. But if he doesn't, his floor is pretty low. Right. Like
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one of the unique things about Jared McCain at the next level is if he develops that, he can be an all-star caliber player, right? If he gets that. because of that, I think he's closer to his floor than his ceiling in terms of what he's most likely to do. I think his floor is pretty solid because of the shooting. The way the NBA is today, there's going to be a role for him somewhere with the way he can shoot the ball. But if he can't develop himself off the bounce and more of his playmaking abilities, I think he is somewhat limited to a bench role, and fit is going to matter a lot in terms of how long his NBA career goes on. So I have him closer to his floor than his ceiling for that reason, but he can still be a solid role player. Fit will matter. So as we're looking in this draft, we have him projected to go just outside the lottery, a top 20, top 25 pick, but outside the lottery.
Mm-hmm.
In that range, who do you think is the best team fit for him?
I'd go with the New Orleans Pelicans just because that's a team that's found success with small guards recently. Like you look at Jose Alvarado, obviously very different player than McCain. He sort of makes his living on defense, on being a pest, but they've also not been afraid to sign CJ McCollum or trade for him, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And I don't think McCollum is, I would say that's on the higher end of outcomes that McCain could be. But I like that structure there. I like that you could play him next to Herb Jones in the backcourt and you'd have this 6'7" like ace defender alongside him.
Yeah, I think that is somewhat necessary. I also think he has to go to a team where he doesn't have to handle a lot of ball handling duties, right? And I think being in New Orleans makes sense for that. Because New Orleans already has Jordan Hawkins, I'm going with the Magic as his best team fit. They are picking in the top 20. He's somebody who there won't have to be relied on to be a primary ball handler. They have a number of them. He's not going to be relied on to be a primary scorer. Paulo Banchero has that kind of wrapped up. Franz Wagner obviously has a secondary option there. So he can be more of that secondary shooting option, provide spacing. They're a team that uses a lot of combo guards too. Markel Fultz, Cole Anthony, chief among them. They're also not going to be able to pay all of those guards. And so I think McCain is somebody you can come in and count on to be a replacement for somebody, be a bench guy and provide the shooting to space the floor. I think the Magic makes sense. Pelicans certainly do as well. But any team that needs shooting, but already has their primary options figured out, I think is a good landing spot for McCain. Mm-hmm. Now, we touched on floor ceiling a little bit. We're talking about his peak year in his NBA career. What does that look like from a statistical standpoint for Jared McCain?
I think his peak year, I'm going to go 17 points a game.
All right.
Probably like, let's say 4 boards. I mean, he was a deceptively good rebounder his
Yeah.
1 year in Durham. Really, really tough on the glass. Like was going over bigger dudes who probably were 6, 7, 8 inches taller than him. And I'll say he averages 3 assists, shoots, let's say 39% from 3.
We're in the same wavelength here. We're on the same wavelength here. As we find more and more videos we do, we've got some Discord comments about how much we agree, and that makes sense. I had him at about 15 points a game, 4 boards, and one of the better 3-point percentages in the league, around 45% peak year for him. I think he has the potential to get up to 17, 18 points per game, and I think he can do that over multiple seasons. But I think if he is going to have the career that allows him to get to peak years, he's going to be on a team where his role is somewhat limited, given the lack of ball handling ability and playmaking. And I think 15 points a game, about 5 threes or 3.5 average. I think that gets him about 15 points a game and 4 boards. Certainly a solid role player, significant impact guy, but I don't know if he's going to develop into a starter in this league, which takes us to our next category. Projecting in about 5 years, what is he doing? We have a number of options we go through with these prospects about in 5 years. If he is an all NBA caliber player, superstar, an all-star, he's a starter, bench player, toiling in the G League, he's already out of the league and overseas, or if his playing career is done and he's just a podcaster like us.
Yeah, I said a bench player, and I'll give that caveat. I think he can be a really good bench piece for a playoff team. And, to the point on us being in lockstep here, not arguing enough, I have him 13th on my big board. You have him 14th. He fell 17th on the consensus sleepers board. So maybe a little bit, not super surprising that we're finding a lot of common ground here. But yeah, I think if he can, again, if he refines the handle, if he gets better on defense, which we can touch on when we get to the player comps video, but maybe he becomes a starter. But I think bench is the best bet right now. How about you?
I'm not going to spend too much time on this because I have bench as well. I also think that's best for him. It's not going to surprise me if he is a starter on a bad team in 5 years. right? But
I can see that.
I think he's going to be a bench guy, and that's going to be where he's best used for all the reasons we've talked about. Now, we're also giving each draft prospect a superlative, yearbook style. Jared McCain is most likely to be what from this draft class?
To make a surprisingly good rap album. And let me set the
A rap
stage here.
album, would it be like an R&B? He strikes me more as an R&B guy.
It would be like a maybe like a Brent Faiyaz Blast type of like R&B rap hybrid. And
Okay.
I think when you see how musically talented he is, I could see that unfolding in the next. We'll throw that in his 5-year plan as well. Like, remember when Damian Lillard first started rapping, and it's like,
Yeah.
not bad, not bad. Dude has some bars. Jared McCain might pick up the torch from him.
I had him as most likely to quit basketball to pursue an influencer career.
Would be good at it. He
Would be
certainly
good
has
at
the
it.
platform for it.
He's a TikTok star. I think that's only going to be growing as he goes through this draft process and then has his NBA career. It wouldn't surprise me if he gets to the point where he's toiling around the end of rotations and just basically says, "F it, I'm gonna just do the social media thing and be brand sponsors." That strikes me as a real option for him down the road. Well, we brought it up a couple times. But make sure you check out the best case, worst case comparison video for Jared McCain, because I think we have some good ones there. But Jared McCain, a unique and interesting draft prospect for sure.
The NBA draft is coming up, and I've got something awesome for you. We are partnering with the people at NBA 2K Lab. NBA 2K is the best video game on earth. The people at 2K Lab are making some awesome stuff to make that game even more fun, and they just launched their 2024 NBA Draft Simulator, where you can find the official Sleepers Media Big Board. We ranked our top 75 players in this draft class. Me, Carter, Brian Ralph, Riley Davis. We did it together, and it is featured on the 2K Lab NBA Draft Simulator. You can take control of any team in the draft, play GM with just one click, and see our entire rankings before these videos even come out. Check out the link in the description of this video to try out the draft sim for yourself, and you can find more mini games at nba2klab.com/NBA-mini-games.